Welcome, everyone, to Evolving Together with Christine Labbé, beyond the diagnosis into a new realm of possibilities. Your child deserves to be seen, heard, valued, and celebrated exactly as they are. Hi, I'm Christine, founder of Evolve Movement, a pediatric neuromovement practitioner, conscious parenting coach, and author of Our Superpowers, celebrating differently abled kids and their siblings. I offer new insights, understanding, and expansion that empower you to support your child in a way that is aligned with their soul's potential. You are not limited to the stories you've been taught to believe. You can write your own narrative. It takes 28% of parents with a neurodiverse child to awaken and advocate for change to start seeing progress. Be the change you want to see and take the first step towards a new future. Evolving Together starts now. Welcome to Evolving Together, where we delve into the possibilities beyond your child's diagnosis. I'm Christine Labbé, your host, and today we're going to deep dive into the heart of parenting, self-discovery, and transformation. This episode is especially meaningful as we're joined by a very special guest, my co-author of our upcoming book, Cindy Kaplan. Today, we will explore the inner sanctuary that every parent must cultivate to navigate the complex journey of raising a child with neurodiversity, disabilities, and complex health needs. We'll touch on some key themes from our book, including the transformative power of self-awareness, understanding, and self-compassion, and how these become the foundation for personal and parental growth. But more importantly, we'll be digging into how awakening your inner sanctuary, your place of inner peace, wisdom, and strength, can have a profound impact both on you and your child. From self-care to stepping into empowerment, we'll talk about how creating this inner sanctuary allows parents to show up with greater clarity, resilience, and compassion. So whether you're a parent facing these challenges, a caregiver, or simply someone on a journey of personal growth, this conversation will speak to you in deep, meaningful ways. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Evolving Together. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Cindy back. Thanks for coming back to chat with us today.
So happy to be here always.
So today, Cindy and I really wanted to talk about the inner sanctuary and how parents can begin to cultivate that. So Cindy, why don't we begin by actually talking about what the inner sanctuary is? Perhaps you want to start us off.
Yeah, sure. To me, when I hear the words inner sanctuary, there's something about those two words that just it feels like it's calling me, like who wouldn't want to be in an inner sanctuary, even if it doesn't make any sense as to what that actually means. An inner sanctuary to me is creating and nourishing a space within myself that feels like a coming home. An inner sanctuary where I have the ability within myself to create, nourish, find safety. It's where my inner wisdom resides. I think in order to feel into what an inner sanctuary is, I think we have to embody trust. We have to know that who we are matters. We have to believe that we are whole. We have to believe that there is so much within ourselves that can guide us, can help us make decisions, I like the word nourish, because I feel like if we are taught to look for the nourishment for ourselves outside of ourselves, right? Whether it's food, whether it's all sorts of doing. When we shift that, I mean, of course we need things in the external world, but when we shift our mindset to even think about what it means to nourish ourselves from the inside out, and translating that to living from the inside out, relating to ourselves, relating to our partners, relating to our children from the inside out, our world changes. The way we live changes. And no matter what chaos, messiness, unpredictability that gets thrown our way. And you and I know so well how that happens, right? Whether it's a caregiver not showing up, whether it's somebody getting sick, whether it's our kids getting sick, whether it's not meeting a milestone, whatever it is, when we are continually nourishing ourselves and creating this internal sanctuary, that's where we find our solid ground. That's where we find our center. So that's what it means to me. What about you?
Well, when you're talking, I'm thinking about that's so powerful because how powerful are we when we're so grounded, right, in our center, when we can find that balance, when we're able to regulate, when we're able to move through chaos with more peace within ourselves, when we can shift that. That's extremely powerful because it means that anything that happens outside of us really can't shake us, that at the end of the day, that inner space is much more solid.
Yeah.
And to me, that speaks to empowered living, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's why it's so important for us to have this conversation about that inner sanctuary and what it means and how to cultivate it and how to nourish it, because that's really what's going to empower us on this journey with our children, because it's hard. It is hard. We're not going to deny that it's not hard. And you and I have been through different situations in our lives at different stages that could really shake a person.
Yeah.
If I think about just last year when my daughter had a near-death experience in the ambulance on our way to the hospital, and a few days later, I walk into her hospital room and I'm told that she's going to pass. That really takes for a solid inner space to be able to hold this space for your child in those moments. And I specifically remember on that particular day when I walked into her hospital room, you know, when I was given that news, I walked in there and my entire inner space went straight to peace. And I created that peaceful space with my energy because she needed to feel safe in that moment. And I knew that. And I knew that she would feel my inner space. If I didn't feel that she was safe, that she would feel it. So I had to shift my inner space to feel peace, to feel safety, to create that bubble for her so that she would look into my eyes and feel safe and feel like she could just fall into my arms and that I could hold her in that moment while she recovered. And she did recover. She did recover in that moment. Within 30 minutes of holding that space for her and talking to her and telling her the things that she needed to hear, empowering her in that moment brought her back. I could have never shown up for her in that way if I hadn't been cultivating my inner sanctuary. And I remember during that period of time where she was admitted in hospital, I took many, many moments of pause. I took many moments where I had to remove myself and just sit quietly, quiet, complete quiet, and just be present to myself and hear my inner voice. Because what you say is true. That inner voice, that wisdom that is within us, it tells us what's true. And I think it's from that space that we can trust. And in a situation like the one with my daughter, I knew everything was going to be okay. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that was going to look like. But I could feel within myself when I took moments of pause that everything was going to be okay. And that sometimes obstacles were, pointing you in the right direction. That sometimes you go through hard things, but it actually opens up to another thing that's even better. And, that has happened so many times in my life, many, many times. It's happened many times with Gabby. There are many times where she would get sick. And in some ways, that particular period of time where she was sick was meant to show her how powerful she was and how much things have changed, that she was able to move herself out of an illness with more ease than she did before. And so as much as we would think the illness itself was such a bad thing, for her, it was a lesson in showing her, no, I can get through this. I can get out of this. This is easier now. I'm okay. I got this. And so I think even from a parent, when we can shift our perspective and we can start to see those situations in that way, and we move in that direction with our child so that they learn what they need to learn about their own power. At the same time, alongside them, we learn about our own power.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
stop here and let you chime in.
One, I'm just thinking like anybody listening may still be stuck back at like what you were saying was happening with Gabby, right? Like that's sort of the ultimate fear of any of us as parents. So for any of you that are like stuck at just hearing what Christine and Gabby went through, I want you to go back there for just a minute, because I do think there's so much in what you're saying, but I think I want people to hear that it's not just the shift in perspective. It is years of what you have done to nourish this idea of I'm okay. It's going to be okay. She's going to be okay, regardless of what happens, what it looks like in the physical world. But it's not just being able to say that to ourselves. So can you speak a little bit more to both? I think it's so important for us to talk about, like, what did you do to nourish yourself and up until that moment, and in the hospital, what did you do? Because to come back to that feeling of being at peace, because I'm thinking some people may be like, that's insane. Like, how, you can't just shift your mindset to being, at peace, but that is so what you experienced. And that can only come from years of nourishment in this way, and understanding that, I mean, maybe I'll just quickly, on a much less extreme example, but anytime we're in chaos where we fall into this sort of mindset of, what is happening to me, and to be able to believe, even if it doesn't feel like it, or even if it is so uncomfortable, that this is happening for me, and going along with this understanding that I will get through this and it will be okay, even if in that moment right now it sucks. Mm-hmm. And we get stuck. When we're able to move to any elevated place where we know that there is something in this for me, and it's not exactly this is happening for a reason, it's this is happening for me, and even if I can't see it right now or touch it, I'm just going to choose to believe this. And so anyway, that's maybe how it applies on any given example, and much more minor. But can you speak a little bit more to, like, yeah, how did you get there, and what did it look like in that moment, or during that time?
I think you bring up a great point, because parents will think, well, how do you get to that space? There are certainly steps, and you don't start there. That's definitely not where you start. And for parents to understand, I didn't start there at all. In fact, I was one of those people that suppressed feelings to the max. I didn't feel at all when my daughter was born. And it took for me to go through years of training doing somatic work. As you know, I'm a trained Annette Banyal method neuromovement practitioner, and that was years on the floor, moving subtly, starting to feel myself in movement, starting to feel all of those subtleties within myself. That helped me come home to myself in many ways, reconnect with myself, because I was taking that time to feel. And I think this is the key point here, is taking the time to feel, learning to feel again, allowing ourselves to feel, because so many parents that are listening are exactly the same. We suppress to survive. We suppress to survive because it's hard. It's hard. And the thing is, we have to feel our feelings. We need to move through those emotions. We need to understand where they're coming from. With that comes that compassion. And all of those things are important towards cultivating that inner sanctuary. But to have the inner sanctuary means we need to be able to feel. Because with the painful feelings also come the feelings of knowing you can trust in something, feeling like everything's going to be okay. You need to be able to feel and move through those painful feelings to get to that space,
Yeah.
right? And so that somatic work for me was a bit of a gateway. It was that entry point, that space that was allowing me to start feeling again so I could start to dig deeper. And I think that's where the conscious parenting with Dr. Shefali brought me to a deeper space where I could really start to look at things and understand them, right? Where I could put words to what I was feeling, where I could start to look into my past and get a better understanding of how it was influencing my present and why I was being triggered by certain things that were happening with my daughter. All of these things, this awareness, this is the key word, is that awareness is so important. And that's really the first step, is becoming aware.
Yeah.
What do you think? I know you have so many experiences as well. So, how did your journey start?
It's funny, the memory that's coming up to me right now as we're speaking, I remember doing a workshop years ago in body mind centering by Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. And one of the exercises she had us do is I remember walking up a flight of stairs, and she had said, I want you to walk up the stairs feeling what every step feels like on the bottom of your foot, right? Really feeling right? We often just walk up the stairs. We don't pay attention to how it feels on our feet. Or I remember early in my yoga training, one of our assignments was to brush our teeth like it was the first time we were ever brushing our teeth. I've done an exercise for years when I've led workshops where I give people a piece of chocolate, and to practice eating that piece of chocolate with your eyes closed. It's a completely different experience, right? We just often put food in our mouth and we don't take the time. So it's the same. We live so much of our lives. We're not present. We're not present to what we're putting in our mouths. We're not present to what it feels like sitting in a chair. So even just simple grounding to notice what something feels like on our body. And I think that's the easiest way to begin to practice that awareness, but it's the same process in feeling our feelings, right? And I know most of us were taught to suppress our feelings, many of us. And so in that suppression, oh, I lost my thought. In that suppression of our feelings, we lose the awareness. So I think by the body is such a great way to begin to feel the sensation. And then that same practice goes to feeling our feelings. Then I think because of years and years of suppressing our feelings, we become afraid that even to touch one of those feelings is going to be an avalanche and we will never recover. And so it's easier just to stuff it. I know that was my experience. The feeling of, if I shed a tear, I literally felt like I would never stop crying. So it wasn't worth that risk. And only in like trusting, okay, no, it's going to be okay. And I don't remember whether it was in therapy or whether it was through, sitting in Shavasana, allowing tears, it does stop, right? It's like we are able to turn the faucet on a little bit and allow feelings, and they do stop. And not only do they stop, but they get released. And when we release, we create more space internally to allow for more oxygen, for more blood flow, for more creativity, and to then be able to feel other feelings. So important. And I also I want to just jump to something else that you had pointed to when you were talking about your story about this is about how important the embodiment is when it is so truly felt. When you're feeling that peace, it transfers to Gabby. When
Yes.
we are feeling tense and stressed, I mean, I think this is something we can all relate to, even when like the energetic world feels so unreachable or untenable to many people. You know what it feels like to walk into the room with someone who's feeling stressed. We feel that. That's an energetic feeling. So, and our kids feel that. So they're like, we can't underscore the importance of when we are feeling centered, when we are at peace, how that bleeds in the most beautiful way to those around us and what that does for them, right? When we are feeling that, it allows our kids to feel free. And as you were saying, like Gabby was able to find her way of healing in that moment. So
What you speak to is so important because as parents, we have to learn to create that healing and learning environment for our children. And I think the piece that's missing is caring for ourselves,
yes.
is doing exactly what we're talking about, is moving through our feelings, is understanding them, is releasing them. You know, when you say you start to cry, you let all that stuff go, you release so much, and that makes space for something else. It does, because otherwise, if we keep all that stuff within ourselves, it fogs how we view the world. It fogs how we view our children. It fogs how we view situations. So when we start to release that, there's space for a new mindset. There's space for a new perspective. There's space to see things differently and to move through it with more ease. But it takes that time to feel and process and sit with what we're feeling. And some parents are afraid to feel what they're feeling. Sometimes they feel shame for what they're feeling. And there has to be a safe space for them to feel those things, to process them, because otherwise they stay within them. And you know, we talk a lot about dis-ease turns into disease. It really truly does. Parents need to care for themselves because if they don't care for themselves, they're not going to be able to care for their children. And as you say, the children feel when the parents are anxious. They feel when the parents are stressed. They feel when the parents are not living in joy. They feel that. You know, I watched my daughter the other day with her rec therapist. Her rec therapist was full of energy. The energy was so high. It was potent. I mean, I could feel shivers throughout my body just walking into the living room because it was such high vibration, right? And my daughter was, after that session, so much better than she was before it. And it just goes to show how important the environment is. It's so important. And it's not about what we're saying and it's not about what we're doing. It's about how we're showing up with our energy. Are we optimistic? Are we positive? Are we living from a hopeful space? Right? Hope is a big word here. Hope. Parents, a lot of parents feel like there is no hope or they're robbed of it. Right? So I think where we come in is really to show parents there is hope and that hope starts with us. It starts with us finding that heaven within ourselves because it really starts to trickle into the outer world. Not because the outer world necessarily changes, it's because we move through it very differently.
Yes. Yeah. Beautifully said. And I'm remembering years ago when my oldest, who's now 25, was 2 or 3, and he would respond to me so differently when I went to a yoga class. Maybe he was a little older than 2 or 3 at this point, maybe 4 or 5. He was fine saying goodbye to me when I went to a yoga class versus when I was on a phone call or other things, or I wasn't on my phone all the time when he was 5, but I'll make it more general. Our kids can respond to us meditating or doing something where they know it is for us versus if we're on our phones and they don't have access to us that way, right? They don't have access to us if we leave for something that brings us back to a different energetic place where it feels good versus something where we're just not available. And they feel that. And I just remember that being so striking to me when he was fine, say goodbye to me, and when he was not okay, not getting that attention. And the other thing that I think is so important to not leave out of this conversation is that it's not an either or, and it's not a I'm either going to be optimistic or I'm going to feel completely defeated, but that we can live in this. There can be both, even at the same time, right? We can be in our sadness and still have access to optimism, for lack of a better word, or we can still be in sadness or grief and feel hopeful or whole at the same time. And I think I think for me, that was another barrier to feeling my feelings for years too, was the feeling that if I do that, then I am that, versus I am me feeling these feelings. And in feeling those feelings, I then have access to all these other parts of myself that point more towards joy and fulfillment and ease.
Yes, and I think that's a good point you raised, because we don't want to put this pressure on parents. They already have enough pressure and expectation, right? That we don't want to put pressure on them to think, no, you can be in this place of joy and fulfillment all the time. No, we move,
Yeah.
but it's our power to move out of, right? So it's not about not feeling sad. It's not about not feeling grief. That's going to happen over and over again throughout our lives. Those feelings are going to come up. It's not like we move into a space where none of those things affect us anymore. We're human. What we're cultivating is our ability to regulate our nervous system, is our ability to move out of those spaces, to feel into them with ease, and to move out of them with ease, and to allow them to come in without fearing them, right? It's living fearlessly. I think this is really a key thing, is we start to live fearlessly because we know within ourselves that nothing that can happen will shake us enough that we won't be able to handle it. Right? And I think it's so important. It's so important because I think fear is a big topic for parents, because we attach to stories in the future, stories from the past, instead of being present. You talked about us not being present, not connecting to ourselves in the present moment, right? And I think that's really key what you said, because otherwise we're either thinking about the worst things that could happen and fearing those things, or we're fearing that things from the past will happen again. And that influences how we show up every single day.
Absolutely. Well, and maybe I'll just show or share just a real, because it just happened the other day and it happens all the time. And I will also say that after being with Mira for almost 23 years now, yes, the grief still comes up, right? It does show up. It's that I have a different way of being with that grief now than I did years ago. But just this past Sunday, so my husband had been traveling. He's about to travel again. We have two new caregivers. Like I've been kind of operating from a place of feeling pretty fried, and setting Mira's schedule, etc. So Sunday we had somebody supposedly coming from 3 to 9, and I had a plan for what I was going to do with that time. And I got a text that morning, Sunday morning, saying she had food poisoning and couldn't come. The first thing I do is kind of go to despair. My heart sinks to my toes. I'm disappointed. I'm angry. I go to that, oh, here we go again, because this has happened. So keep in mind, like any negativity from previous experiences with that shows up in that moment. The fear of me not being able to do what I had planned to do. I don't even remember what it was. It's only Tuesday. All of that enters. So I am not in the present moment. And it's so understandable, right? Like it makes so much sense. So all I'm doing in that moment is being aware that I'm feeling miserable and I'm annoyed and I'm angry and I'm disappointed and I'm scared and all of those things. And from me realizing and seeing that and telling myself, okay, so now what is it that I need? Cindy, what is it that you need? As well as holding on to this belief that it will be okay. You've gotten through this before 50,000 times. You will get through this again. By then, and this is not just like in 10 seconds, I've moved through this process. No, over the course of several minutes, maybe a half an hour, I don't remember. But in doing so, and then the more I can hold on to, I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We've gotten through this. What is it that I need right now? What is it that I need to embody? Part of it is that belief that we're going to be okay. Then I'm able to shape shift. Then I'm able to look at, all right, well, my husband is here now. What is it that I really need? I'm going to ask for that, right? Or I'm going to state, this is what I need to do. Sure, I needed to give up something, but I also needed to really, it gave me the opportunity to really sort of take inventory on what was most important for me to happen. Oh, okay. I remember it was that I wanted to go to my son's first hockey game. And so then I was able to still make that happen. Right now, a different day, a different scenario. If my husband were out of town, maybe that couldn't happen. But then I could also tune into, okay, so then I'm with Mira for the evening because my husband had to go somewhere. Then it allows me to show up so differently for that moment. I was able to go to the hockey game and come back and be full on and accepting the piece that it was almost like it had left, that this person wasn't able to come. And here we are at a new moment. So that's kind of the process. I still had to feel the frustration, but to know that that frustration is coming from the past and the future. And in allowing myself to feel all of those feelings, how frustrating that 23 years later, I'm still needing care in order to go to a kid's hockey game. That's frustrating, no question. But to allow myself to feel that is what brings me into, okay, so bottom, I don't have the help. I don't have the help today. How do I move through the rest of this day? Taking care of myself first so that I can show up for Mira in the way that I want to as well. So I hope that story may resonate and or at least explain a little bit about the process in those moments and how so easily we take ourselves out of the present moment.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also speaking of accepting what is. This
Yes,
is what it
absolutely.
is. You know,
Yep.
this is the situation, and we can choose to remain in that space of being angry. And, those emotions are going to come up, and moving through the process you just spoke of is very important. But once we've moved through it, then we can choose to move a different direction, right? And just simply accepting what is,
Yep. Yep.
because that's where our power lies. It's in our choices. It's in our choices to move out of something. Now, I think a lot of parents sometimes will struggle to transition from the one place to the other,
Mhm.
right? Moving from being in that space of heaviness, being in that space of feeling all of those feelings, and transitioning into a new place. I think that's what, so for us, it's easier because we've cultivated that, that process you speak of, the awareness, understanding, having that self-compassion, then understanding what you need and asking for it, right? All of those things for some people are very difficult.
Absolutely.
These are all things that they need to practice. And I think that's where it's important for a lot of parents to know there are different ways for them to begin to cultivate, this inner sanctuary that we speak of, that can then lead to living a more empowered life, where you can start to do this on a regular basis, whatever life throws at you. And I think, before we move forward, I think we should definitely give parents a few tips, a few things that they might be able to start cultivating at home. And what are the most important things that they might be able to start with to be able to start this process?
Mhm. So yeah, I love that. And let's definitely share some. And before we do, I just wanted to say one thing. I think oftentimes this phrase of accepting the as is, or some people say like it is what it is. I know a lot of people that react very negatively to that. And so I just think it's really important that we clarify what that means, because it isn't a like, oh, it is what it is, and sort of give up all control or hope or ability to move forward. It's not throwing it away, and it's not um I can't find the word right now, but it's not a giving up. It's not a giving up. It's a surrendering. And in that surrendering, we then can see how we want to move forward. So I hope that makes a little bit of a distinction. Um,
I agree with you because, and I think it's important what you say, because it's also about when we can surrender and accept what is, there is a space for us to see it differently.
yes, it's not a
Right?
giving up. It's
It's
not a
not
giving
a
up.
giving up.
It's a surrendering so that we can move forward
That's right, in a different way,
in a different way. Yeah.
rather than continuing to repeat the same that really keeps us in the suffering. So it's really a way into a different space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So absolutely. Thank you for
So,
bringing that up.
so going back to like, what can people do? I think we've said it in this conversation many times, is it's beginning to practice that awareness. So even if you're not yet willing or feel comfortable to enter an uncomfortable feeling, take note, notice, okay, oh, I'm feeling like I'm going to cry. I'm feeling really frustrated right now. And I think that's also, maybe this is for another conversation, but there's so much power in stating what we're feeling versus what we often do is to blame or feel like we're never going to get back up if we enter that. So even just beginning to notice that we're feeling something is the beginning. But then the other piece is nourishing ourselves in, again, maybe you're not going to believe it at first, but saying to yourself, I'm okay.
Mhm.
And it is, there's more work to do in terms of understanding both the triggers and why we are feeling certain ways, what really is coming up for us. But maybe even start by just these physical exercises. Maybe it is by brushing your teeth like you're brushing your teeth for the first time. Maybe it is taking a step outside and breathing the air and feeling what it feels like to have that fresh air enter your nostrils. Anything that brings you into the present moment is was the first thing that I thought of. What do you want to add something, and maybe more will come to me?
I think anything that you're feeling, period. Your senses, heightening your senses, anything that you allow yourself to feel. So it could be, sometimes I'll tell parents to do a body scan. Maybe they're transitioning from one place to the other. Maybe a parent is returning home from work. They're in their car. They take 2 minutes to scan their body from head to toe, and they start to feel what their body feels like. Are their shoulders up into their ears? Do they feel tightness in their chest? How are they breathing? Right? Do they feel pain in their lower back? Do they just taking note of what their body feels like? That's already beginning a practice of feeling and awareness. And I feel like sometimes parents are afraid of moving into the feelings right away. They're afraid of moving into the pain right away, which is absolutely understandable. So when you start with baby steps, and you just allow yourself to feel. A body scan worked for me because my physical body, it was important for me to move towards that through my physical body. That was very important for me in my own transformation. But for another person, that may not be the case. Some parents are very much capable of beginning to sit in meditation or, even taking a mindful walk in nature. That can be something where you're allowing yourself to be present to the trees, the sounds that you're hearing, all of those things.
It's a
Anything
great challenge. It's a great challenge.
it
I
is.
challenge anybody listening to go for a walk in nature without your phone and without your AirPods, right? A very different experience. And I think even before any of this, what would it take to give yourself permission to slow down? Because if you are anything like I was for many, many years, I kept myself so busy
Mhm.
And only years later did I realize that was a phenomenal protective pattern that I developed to protect me from feeling my feelings. As long as I kept busy, I didn't have to feel. And so for me, when I began my yoga practice many years ago, lying in Shavasana, tears would just come. I didn't even know what I didn't even know what was it, but it was just it was just a release. But for me to give myself first the permission to simply slow down, like just create that in your life and see what happens and notice the moments that you want to break out of that if a feeling, right? Because it will come up. There's no, you were both talking about, our senses in our body, and our body cannot lie. So when we slow down, feelings arise. But to give ourselves permission to feel, permission to slow down, I think those would be two of the really important ones.
I love what you say about the doing, because all of us will have excuses as to why we have to keep doing, because there's this huge list of things that have to be done, right? But really, it's those moments where we're doing nothing, where we just sit with ourselves. That was my saving grace when everything was happening with Gabby. It was just sitting in silence by myself, because in that moment there was peace. In that moment I could recharge. In that moment I could find balance again. Those moments are precious, precious, precious times. And those are the moments where you can actually hear that inner voice telling you that it's going to be okay, to trust in the process. That's where you start to feel the peace, because you feel within yourself that it's going to be all right. But if we don't make space for it, if we don't slow down, if we don't allow ourselves to feel, then we're missing this beautiful opportunity to live life in a very different way, a much more empowered way. So, for all of us there out there that are doers, because I totally get it, that was my, if you could define me, it was definitely a doer, busy, 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 even to the extent of being a workaholic, which again is a way to not feel, is to keep ourselves busy, as you say. It's so important, so, so important to move out of the habit of the doing and to simply start being in the being, right?
Yeah. And I think this can be daunting to think about doing it on your own. So to anyone listening, this doesn't have to be done on your own. And whether it's finding a group, and there's so many, supportive groups online, even to be a part of, that really can foster and nourish a sense of safety to feel, or working with a therapist or working with a coach, to not expect that you need to do this on your own, and that there is safety within, sometimes we need someone else to hold that space for us to begin to create that safety again, whether it's an individual therapist or coach or a group, that there are ways to do this that may feel a little more accessible.
Yes, and being able to be in a safe space, to understand what it feels like for someone else to create a safe space for us to move through what's happening, actually teaches us how to create a safe space for our children as well, right? Because once we can feel the safe space within, we can create the safe space for our children to really begin to thrive. And it's such a key thing. And so, to your point, it's so important for parents to take the time to invest in themselves, to get that support, to get that help, because it makes a huge difference. And sometimes we focus so much on the children, right? We put all of the resources into supporting the child. But the truth is that relationship between the parent and the child is extremely powerful and has a huge impact on that child's development and what's going to be possible. Huge. So
Yeah.
it's really important for parents to take the time caring for themselves, learning how to care for their inner world, because that's how they're going to teach their child to do the same. Teaching their child to be empowered, teaching their child to trust in life, to find that peace within. We can't teach that unless we know how to do it ourselves.
Do it. Absolutely.
Right? So I'm going to close this conversation, Cindy. I think it was really powerful. And, I'm hoping that parents can write comments, ask us questions, reach out to us, because there's so much we can talk about. You and I have so many conversations together about these topics, and we could dig deeper. So it's always nice to get feedback from parents that are interested in certain things, or they want us to talk about particular topics. So we're always happy, and we invite you to please reach out to us and let us know if there are things that you'd like us to go deeper on from this conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you, Cindy. And we'll see you soon. As we close today's conversation, I want to leave you with a reminder. The journey we've discussed of self-care, awakening the inner sanctuary, and stepping into empowerment is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. The practices we've talked about today are lifelong tools, not only for navigating the demands of parenting, but for creating a life that reflects your truest self. By caring for yourself, awakening your inner sanctuary, and embodying empowerment, you model a life of authenticity and resilience for your child. This inner work not only transforms how you parent, but also sets the stage for co-creating a new future, one that is aligned with both your own soul's purpose and your child's. Together, as you nurture your inner sanctuary, you foster a ripple effect of stability, joy, and empowerment in your home. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt exploration. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your inner sanctuary is always within reach, waiting to guide you back to your deepest wisdom and strength. Until next time. You've been listening to Evolving Together with Christine Labbé, beyond the diagnosis into a new realm of possibilities. Tune in every second Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time or 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights, understanding, and expansion that empower you to support your child in a way that is aligned with their soul's potential. Your child deserves to be seen, heard, valued, and celebrated exactly as they are. Are you ready to be the change you want to see for your neurodiverse child? Take the first step towards a new future and visit www.christinelabbe.com or check out our collective site, www.evolvemovement.ca.